I'll never forget the American tourist at Berlin's Tiergarten who tried to organize an impromptu baseball game on a Sunday morning. He'd brought a full equipment bag, bat, gloves, bases, the works. Within minutes, a park ranger appeared, speaking perfect English, explaining that organized sports require a permit and the designated sports areas were 3 kilometers away. The American's response? He claimed he was exercising his NATO ally recreational rights, and that as a taxpayer whose country protects Germany, he should be exempt from local park regulations. He literally pulled up a screenshot of a Google search for U.S. military bases in Germany as proof that Americans had earned special privileges. The ranger, maintaining absolutely legendary composure, explained that yes, while he appreciated the historical alliance, park permits still applied to everyone, including visiting allies. The American then demanded to know why the ranger wasn't more grateful, citing the Marshall Plan. From 1948, the ranger simply responded that the Marshall Plan, while historically significant, did not include a clause about baseball permits in Berlin Park. My cousin works as a cultural liaison in Prague, and she encountered an American couple absolutely convinced that Czech crown currency was a tourist trap. They'd done the math wrong and believed 25 crowns to the dollar meant everything cost 25 times more than it should. When she explained that meant things were actually cheaper, they insisted she was in on the scam and demanded to pay in euros at the real exchange rate. They threatened to report the entire country to the Better Business Bureau. Meanwhile, a museum curator in Krakow once watched an American ask why all the signs in Auschwitz were so depressing and whether they had a more uplifting version of the tour. The curator needed a very long coffee break after that one. But these are just appetizers. The real feast of confident American confusion happens in places where simple systems meet elaborate American reinterpretation. Picture a Budapest thermal bath on a Wednesday afternoon. My friend Zofia works the front desk at Sekeni, one of the historic baths that's been operating since 1913. She watched an American family arrive in full beach attire, neon swimsuits, inflatable pool toys, a cooler full of beer, and a Bluetooth speaker already blasting Jimmy Buffett. They were genuinely shocked to learn they needed to shower first, that outside food and drink were prohibited, and that the speaker absolutely had to go. The father's theory? This is communist-era regulation that never got removed after 1989. He insisted that the rules were Soviet propaganda designed to suppress individual freedom, and that as an American, he was helping them embrace capitalism by ignoring them. Zofia explained that these were hygiene regulations common to thermal baths worldwide, dating back to Roman times. The American then claimed the Romans probably weren't that clean anyway and demanded to speak to someone who understood American spa culture. He genuinely believed that his Howard Johnson hotel pool experience qualified as relevant expertise. They were eventually escorted out, not for the rule violations, but because the father jumped into the 42 degrees Celsius medicinal pool without testing the temperature and emerged screaming about a lawsuit-worthy safety hazard. Zofia still has his Yelp review framed in the break room. 1 star, discriminates against Americans and maintains dangerous pool temperatures without warning labels. Then there's the phenomenon I witnessed myself at a Stockholm pharmacy. An American woman wanted to buy cold medicine, basic pseudoephedrine, available over the counter in the US. In Sweden, you need to ask the pharmacist and they'll get it from behind the counter after a brief consultation. Simple system. This woman interpreted the entire process as a conspiracy. She was convinced Sweden was controlling medications to increase profits for Big Pharma, and that the pharmacist was gatekeeping to drive up prices. When the pharmacist calmly explained that this prevents misuse and ensures proper dosing, the woman countered with a detailed theory about how Sweden was a surveillance state testing Chinese social credit systems. She demanded to know why Sweden hated freedom and whether this was because of socialism. The pharmacist, with the patience of someone who definitely does yoga, explained that controlled pharmacy distribution actually reduces healthcare costs and improves public health outcomes. The American's response? She filmed herself being denied medicine and posted it with hashtags about medical freedom. She was literally prescribed the exact medicine she wanted, in the correct dose, for €8. She left it on the counter and stormed out on principle. My colleague Andreas works at Munich's main train station and has achieved guru-level patience with the German Pfand bottle deposit system. For context, you pay a 25-cent deposit on plastic bottles, return them to any machine, get your money back. Elegantly simple. Yet he's watched countless Americans throw money away, literally. One guy spent 15 minutes at the bottle return machine, then concluded it was broken because it only gave him back €3 for 12 bottles. Andreas watched him abandon the bottles and leave. Another American woman became convinced the whole system was a scam because nothing in life is free and refused to believe she'd get real money back. She threw away approximately €40 worth of bottles during her week-long stay, insisting she wasn't going to fall for it. The peak incident involved an American man who'd figured out the system but then became obsessed with beating it. He started collecting bottles from public bins, convinced he'd discovered a loophole that would make him rich. Andreas had to explain that this was literally the intended behavior, incentivizing recycling, and that he wasn't gaming anything. The American was visibly disappointed that his entrepreneurial discovery was actually just using the system correctly. The Estonian e-residency program seemed designed to attract digital nomads, but nobody warned them about Americans who refuse to believe government systems can be digital. My friend Katie works in Tallinn's e-residency office and has a collection of baffled American responses. One man brought a briefcase full of printed documents, birth certificate, college transcripts, employment history, character references, a letter from his pastor, insisting that real government paperwork requires paper. When Katie explained that Estonia's entire system is digital, that he'd do everything online including signing documents with his digital ID, he became convinced it was an elaborate phishing scheme. He demanded to know where the real office was and whether Estonia was even a real country or some kind of scam. Katie pulled up Estonia's Wikipedia page. He said Wikipedia couldn't be trusted. She showed him a map. He said maps can be doctored. He ultimately refused to participate in what he called the first digital nation-state scam and wrote a blog post warning other Americans about Baltic region crypto governments. He's still getting details wrong. He thinks Estonia uses cryptocurrency as official currency and that everyone lives in server farms. Meanwhile, in Ljubljana, a city registration office worker named Matej encountered an American who'd moved to Slovenia but absolutely refused to register his address with the government. In Slovenia, you're required to register within 3 days of moving. Simple administrative requirement. This American interpreted it as government surveillance and insisted that America's freedom from registration was superior. Matej explained that registration is how you access healthcare, get mail, pay local taxes, and essentially exist legally in the country. The American countered that he'd live off the grid and exercise his right to privacy. Matej pointed out that he'd already given Slovenia his passport information, visa details, and residence address to get his visa. The American paused, then claimed that was different because it was international law, but that local registration was overreach. He genuinely believed there was a logical distinction. Matej asked how he expected to receive mail. The American said he'd use a P.O. box. Matej explained you need to be registered to get a P.O. box. The American asked about general delivery. Matej explained that also requires registration. They went in circles for 40 minutes before the American finally admitted he'd seen a YouTube video about sovereign citizens and thought it applied internationally. Matej took a long lunch that day. Then there's my favorite story from Barcelona, where my friend Julia works in housing registration. An American couple bought an apartment without understanding Spain's empadronamiento system, registering your residence with the city hall. They assumed it was optional because in America you just live places. When Julia explained they needed to register to get resident parking permits, healthcare cards, and register their children for school, they became convinced the entire system was designed to track citizens. The husband launched into a passionate speech about the Fourth Amendment. Julia gently reminded him that the Fourth Amendment is American and doesn't apply in Spain. He said, freedom is universal, and that Spain should adopt American values. She pointed out that Spain has been continuously inhabited for thousands of years and had complex administrative systems before America existed. He called this irrelevant ancient history. The turning point came when their car got towed from a resident-only zone because they weren't registered residents. They showed up at Julia's office demanding she fix this injustice and punish whoever towed an American's car. She processed their registration in 10 minutes. They still left a Google review complaining about bureaucratic overreach and anti-American discrimination. At a Stockholm restaurant, my friend Eric serves traditional Swedish food and has developed a thick skin regarding American interpretations. One customer ordered the restaurant's acclaimed toast skagen, shrimp on toast with dill and roe. When it arrived, he examined it suspiciously and asked, "Where's the rest of it?" Eric explained that this was the complete dish, a classic Swedish delicacy. The American insisted something was wrong, that this was an appetizer portion, being passed off as an entree. Eric showed him the menu description. The American said the menu must be misprinted. Eric offered to show him photos of the dish from the restaurant's history, literally the exact same preparation since 1956. The American claimed portion sizes have inflated since the 1950s, and that he was being served Depression-era rations. He demanded 4 more portions to make it a real meal. Eric brought them. The American ate 1.5 servings, then complained about being too full. He left a review claiming the restaurant tricks Americans into over-ordering with tiny portions and gave it 2 stars. Eric printed it out and hung it next to the photograph of the King of Sweden eating the exact same dish at the restaurant in 1987. In Marseille, a Bouillabaisse specialist named Océane has achieved legendary status for her response to an American who demanded his seafood stew be served properly hot. Bouillabaisse is traditionally served warm, not scalding, to preserve the delicate flavors. The American insisted this meant the kitchen forgot to heat it and demanded it be microwaved. Océane explained that microwaving a €48 traditional Provençal fish stew would be, in her exact words, a crime against both cuisine and my ancestors. The American countered that the customer is always right and that in America, all soup comes steaming hot. Océane pointed out he was in France. He said, cooking is universal, and that heat is heat. She offered to prepare him something else. He refused, insisting the bouillabaisse just needed to be fixed. Océane, reaching her limit, told him he was welcome to reheat it himself when he got back to his hotel. He took this as permission, asked for a to-go container, and left. He later posted a TripAdvisor review claiming the restaurant serves cold soup and admits their microwave is broken. Océane's response, which became local legend, simply read, "Monsieur's review is as warm as his understanding of French cuisine." My personal favorite involves my friend Yuki in Osaka, who works at a traditional kaiseki restaurant. An American couple made a reservation for the full 12-course experience, a carefully orchestrated culinary journey taking 3 hours. They arrived 20 minutes late, which already disrupted the kitchen's timing. Then they proceeded to rearrange the courses. They wanted all the dishes brought out simultaneously, so we can choose what to eat first. Yuki explained that kaiseki is about progression, that each course prepares your palate for the next, and that the timing is integral to the experience. The wife said, "In America, we believe in freedom of choice." Yuki responded that they were welcome to choose a different restaurant. The husband jumped in, claiming they'd paid for the food and should be able to consume it however we want. He compared it to buying groceries. Once you buy food, you can eat it in any order. Yuki, maintaining composure that would make a Buddhist monk jealous, explained that they'd paid for a kaiseki experience, which includes preparation, timing, and service. It's not a grocery purchase, it's a crafted experience. They reluctantly agreed to eat the courses in order but then photographed each one for several minutes before eating, letting the food cool and disrupting the pace. They finished the 12 courses in 90 minutes by rushing, then complained that they didn't feel full enough for the price. Yuki's chef emerged from the kitchen for the first time in 8 years to personally tell them that speed-eating kaiseki was like sprinting through a museum and complaining you didn't see enough art. The final story comes from Reykjavik, where my friend Sigrid manages a restaurant specializing in traditional Icelandic cuisine. An American ordered the fermented shark, hakarl, after reading it was authentic. When it arrived, he took one bite, gagged dramatically, and accused the restaurant of serving spoiled food. Sigrid explained that fermentation is the preparation method, that this dish is a preserved food from Iceland's harsh historical winters, and that it's an acquired taste many Icelanders don't even enjoy. The American insisted that no culture intentionally eats rotten food, and that this must be a prank played on tourists. Sigrid showed him documentation of hakarl's history. He claimed it was fabricated to justify serving bad food. She offered to replace his meal with something else, at no charge. He refused, saying he'd prove it spoiled by reporting the restaurant to health inspectors. Sigrid welcomed him to do so, noting that the health department inspects them regularly and approves their fermentation process. The American then pivoted, demanding a refund because he'd been served inedible food. Sigrid pointed out that he'd ordered it specifically, been warned it was acquired taste, and eaten the complimentary bread instead. He said the bread didn't count, and that he'd come for an authentic experience but received a practical joke. Sigrid finally asked what would satisfy him. He wanted a full refund, a written apology, and compensation for emotional distress. She offered him exactly what he'd paid for hakarl, €12. He took it and left a review claiming Icelandic cuisine isn't real food, and that tourists should stick to familiar options. Sigrid's response simply noted, hakarl has been eaten in Iceland for over 1,000 years. Customers' understanding of cuisine, less than 24 hours. Here's what I've learned watching Americans navigate European systems that don't bend to their expectations. The most confident people are usually the most wrong, and the most wrong people are always the most confident. There's something darkly funny about watching someone argue with centuries of tradition armed only with Google search results and vibe. But maybe that's the content goldmine, watching confidence collide with reality and somehow, impossibly, confidence still believes it's winning. These stories write themselves. The Americans just show up and provide material. Next time, when Americans try to explain local laws to actual police officers in countries they arrived in yesterday. Spoiler alert, it goes exactly as badly as you'd imagine.